Yes, indeed, we are here. We are here, and we are happy to be able to give you information today that you are seeking from us. And so, thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to provide the information you are seeking.
Thank you. And just for information for humans, what type of collectives are here, or entities or beings?
Well, as you know, these messages do not just get heard by humans. There are many that are on the surface that are listening, and many that are out supporting this planet that are also listening to this broadcast. And so we are servicing much and many, more than you think, of being just humans. And we would like to introduce ourselves as the Arcturian Collective. There is Palladians here, of course. There is many different collectives that are sitting, so to speak, with us as we are providing the most appropriate information for you today. Is this label and list enough for you?
Yes, thank you. We would like to know about the dragons on Earth. Were there any dragons on Earth?
On the surface of the planet that you know as Earth, there has been many life contracts given to those that you would label dragons. There is a deep connect to the time when there was prehistoric animals that you would call dinosaurs. The dragons were amongst them in the time that dinosaurs roamed this planet, roamed this earth. They have a long lifespan, and they did observe, and they were here for a long time. They chose to experience what they needed to experience here, and they did eventually, one by one, choose to go to a different dimension or have different lifetimes elsewhere. So yes, there has been dragons on the history of this earth.
Okay. And who brought them here to Earth?
They chose to be born here, or they chose to move here and come here and reside here. So it's their choices, their life contracts to play it out. No one's responsible for them apart from themselves. We say that for all collectives.
Okay. And where did they come from?
They have many different planets that they have resided in. They're all part of Source, and they have chosen to have such certain lifestyles and life experiences that you would perceive them to be in the shape form of dragons.
Okay. And do they, what did they look like? Do they look like how we portray them here on Earth?
Yes, their portrayal is being accurately represented, and that is important for you to still have the memory of the powerful beings of the dragons, because most have had experiences with dragons in other lifetimes. So it is to remind you that there is more powerful beings than you when you are in a 3D body, thinking that you're the master of the universe yourself. And so it is about reminding you that there is bigger beings who are much wiser and more powerful. It is not to burst your ego bubbles, you precious little humans, but it is about reminding yourselves when you are not wanting to think about God or religion or other icons, when you know that there is what you would perceive to be animals, such as dragons. It's like it doesn't trigger your egos too much, because man still thinks he is superior to all. But he wants to know that I probably rode a dragon, I was a master of a dragon, and I probably had power and control over dragons. This is what most, some people still think that they have power and control over, because they still feel like they should own things and control things and manipulate things. So yes, 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 dragons have been supporting humanity and this planet for a long time. Many have, not just these what you would perceive to be fairy tale myths. They have been real, they are real, and they are still of service for humanity today.
Okay. And how was the interaction with the humans here on 3D?
The density has chosen no dragon to physically be here at this time, truly. The bigger, advanced, more wiser dragons do not want to embody such density. That is not their cup of tea. That is the saying. We hope you understand. The density of this planet is not their favorable desire to be there in that. So they are in a higher dimension on this planet supporting, just like as we are overseeing and supporting the planet at our perspective, which is a higher dimension, but it's still in the same location as your planet. We are overwatching you and overseeing you. There are many who are here as conscious beings. There are many that are here physical beings within what you would call ships, observing and having a higher dimensional perspective of your 3D lives and experiences while you're still in the 3D planet. There are a collection of dragons who are in the dimension of non-physical, but in a mind's eye perspective dimension. So you cannot physically see them, you can sense them, you're aware of them, but it's the mind's eye, not your physical 3D eyes, that will see them. Some of you are so attuned that you can see them with your mind's eye, which is an overlay onto your 3D world. And we say that we love those people and those beings as we love all of you. But it is very significant when you can see the dragons with your mind's eye, because you have that beautiful connection that is important. And if you do have that connection, you will know what we are saying.
Is that why sometimes people see dragon shapes in clouds?
Yes. That is just like those people who see ships and clouds as well. So you sensing the dragon's energy, but all your eye can perceive is the cloud.
Okay. And are there any, go ahead.
Wanting to say, remembering that the 3D human still has fears of other things. And so you may be in contact with what you would perceive as another person or being that looks like you, who's just got different perspective of information from a higher dimension, and it's a like for like. And so we're saying you feel more comfortable, Sandy, thinking that your subconscious and higher self just look like you, but a little bit more special or shiny or high dimensional. And you know that's not the case, but for your comfort, you kind of assume and accept that, and that is fine. And if you asked for them to present themselves to you, you may not be feeling so comfortable and bold with your choices of asking for that. Not because you're scary looking, but it is different from what you are assuming. This is typical of humans who have great assumptions.
Yes. And are there any dragons that are spirit guides to humans?
Yes, of course. Many, because you have experienced either lifetimes with dragons or you have been part of a dragon collective. So this isn't a coincidence, as we were saying. You're connecting in, thinking you're talking to someone who looks like you on the other side of the telephone game that we're playing right now. The reality is there is no game here. We are high dimensional beings telling you certain things, and we could be looking all sorts of shapes and sizes and colors and anything that could, any imagination that you could portray on what we look like is quite possibly true. So we allow you and accept that you can only cope with thinking that we just look like you. That would be better, wouldn't it? This is why many people still quote, God made you in his image. God didn't make you in his image to make God feel good. You are holding on to that saying so you feel good and you feel comfortable and you feel part of God. God is all of you. God is part of you. You are all one. God is part of everything. Whatever label you need to get your mind around to feel comfortable, we say go for it. We do not mind what you call us and what you imagine we look like. Just know that you are safe, protected, loved, supported, and never alone. We also did hear the conversation you had prior, and this is the appropriate time for us to mention this. While you feel like you are very private with your lives and you're not fully disclosing your behaviors, your thought processes, and everything that you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, and even in between those, you feel, and we're not talking and directly discussing this as the person asking us at this time, this question, who goes by the name of Sandy. We are talking to all of these listeners and all of humanity who needs to hear this. Your private lives are viewed by us. Nothing you do gets unnoticed. Not now and not in the future. Many can come in and look at your lives and your choices, and many will do that currently now and in what you perceive your future. This is important for everyone to learn. And when the consciousness merges into the collective and then eventually goes into source, your private lives have full access to all. We want you to think about that. Those people who are fake gurus, those people who are holding back the truth, those people who are holding back their inner work, those people who are trying to con and manipulate and control others. Nothing is hidden. The truth of all always comes out. We're not trying to scare you. We're trying to keep you reminded of your responsibility and keep you accountable. You've heard this now. So any choices and decisions that you make forward, remember this. Remember your children, your families, all who are involved with you have full access to your choices. Nothing is private and kept from others from our perspective. And many of you will be returning here soon.
And what do you mean by that?
Oh, what do we mean about that? Okay. So as you know, there's changes happening. As you know, this planet is coming to the end of its cycle. And as you know, many are taking the opportunity to shift from their 3D to either return to their high dimensional lives or go somewhere else. And so once you're out of the 3D, you can look back at all 3D. And so if you did want to explore other people's choices in 3D, soon as you get to a high dimension, you can do that. It is like a library of all information of everyone, and you have full access to it. Nothing is kept private. Nothing is off limits to you when you're in a high dimensional perspective. So you have free access to everything and everyone. It is important. How would you grow if you didn't know what was happening on the other side? This is how you have your life reviews. You get to see it from all angles, all aspects, all motivations. You grow. And while you're having this single player life experience now that you perceive as you have everything inside you privately, and you don't quite know how other people are responding and playing and why they are reacting and doing certain things, that is when you're still having the 3D game, when the play is still playing out, when you are the players. When you leave the third dimension, you can be the observers and the researchers, and you remember and see all and learn all. Nothing is hidden. Can you understand how silly it would be if it was hidden? Can you understand the limits of not seeing all when you're at that higher perspective? So for those people who are saying, I'm not going to shift from this 3D until all of the disclosures are going to be made because I demand justice. I demand full disclosures. I want this. I want this. I want this. Cute, sweet little human concept there. We appreciate you and we see you and we know you. But it is a 3D perspective. And when you shift into the fifth dimension, you get to see it all. So are you distracting yourself from finishing up your 3D lives and inner work and connections with your friends and family and empowering yourself out of the 3D limitations? There's so much we could say. Did we answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So we were talking about this influencers that know about quantum healing, that know about reincarnations and what has happened before, especially in Atlantis, and they are repeating kind of the same behavior. We're wondering why is that if they know, the consequences.
Many of them have been blocked by their egos to be accountable for changes of this lifetime. They will not be able to get full access to knowing what they need to do to correct their wrongs, shall we say. Well, we don't view them as wrong, but it's correcting. But many of this will happen on the new earth, on the old earth. We want to make that very clear. Many of those influencers who are leading people down the wrong path because of their ego and because of their limitations, they get to, and they've won the ticket to stay on the old earth. It wasn't their life purpose originally, but because of their choices and because we have asked them multiple times to share the bigger information and they've chosen not to, they've limited themselves. They get to have the consequences to their free will, the consequences of their choices. And so do not worry about them. They will be learning and experiencing the ramifications of their choices very soon.
Right, thank you. And we were talking about life reviews. So who does the life review once you're transitioned from the physical?
It is
here.
Open access to you all. And so it is your responsibility to go back and you review your life because you want to see it from the bigger perspective, because you have full access to every single angle, every single motivation of everyone in conversations. You get to see it every which way. And so because you're wanting to grow and evolve as your soul, because you're motivated to expand and experience and learn every angle and concept, you are responsible for doing that because you want that growth. It is like in 3D, it's almost uncool to grow. Everyone wants to be stuck and stubborn somehow, some way, not motivated to empower themselves. And that is the density. It is the density that is taking over you more than anything. And when you have the freedom of being removed from that density, you're very motivated to learn and experience and explore. So you go and you want to experience all and learn all of your own life contracts and life reviews. Many of you have been doing it emotionally for potentially the last year or so. When you've awoken to it, you are allowed to have memory of certain situations that have occurred in your life as part of you doing your inner work. You can only do the best you can with the 3D perspective. But those who have expanded their mindsets into the 5th dimension already, that can see the patterns and the lessons there, they're doing quite well with releasing that 3D perspective and situations. They've outgrown the victim blame game, vulnerable, disempowered mindsets to being neutral and empowered and appreciative of the experiences and applying and understanding the lessons. Those are the 5th dimensional beings with their mindsets. We don't want anyone to be confused that 5th dimension is only a state of mind. That is a very obnoxious 3D perspective to keep saying that.
Right, thank you. So going back to the life review, do also your guides and spiritual team review it with you?
No, because they've lived it through you and with you. They've already learned their lessons. You get to experience and explore it by yourself to catch up to what everyone else has already learned around you.
Oh, I see. And once you've done that, do you decide then where to go next?
Many contracts have already been signed to go next somewhere else. And so many can be looking at their life reviews on the 5th dimension on New Earth. And this is part of overcoming certain things. It doesn't take as long as you assume, because time is not relevantly measured in doing your life reviews. So there's lots, but we would say after the 5th dimension, when you have sort of mastered that, you don't really do the life review of the 5th dimension as such. There's just this more advanced knowing and growth. The 3rd dimension is the basics of the emotions and overcoming the density. So it is, you don't go to university and review your kindergarten artwork, vocabulary, and behavior, because you just trust that it was all purposeful and that you're not identifying with that. And because you've already mastered at that university level, you've already outgrown and trusted those stepping stones of your evolution.
Right. And then for a soul that just left Source, do they all need to experience 3D first, or they can just go straight to a higher dimension? How would you explain that?
There are choices. You either get to go one dimension down from Source and experience that consciousness, or you could do something else. There is lots of options. So there are beings here who have embodied physical lifetimes for the very first time now on this planet now. They have had no other prior separation experiences from Source. They've always been within Source, observing Source itself. And they've chosen to come here now on this planet to have their first life. And this is a physical life. When you are part of Source, you can observe all.
Yes. And are there any beings that had left Source to a higher dimension, has never gone to 3D?
Yes. So as we just said, you can go one step lower dimensions from source. So you can still be, in the 10th dimension or a 9th dimension, having those experiences. You don't have to start at the first dimension. It is, you can step down from source, going down the higher dimensions, or you could go the other way. There's a choice which way you want to go. Do you want to subtly distance yourself from the higher dimensions and go lower and lower and lower? Or do you want to go the other way and go from the lowest and experience that and then start building yourself back up? It is choices. It is choices. It is choices. And all is possible.
Right. And then when you are a non-physical being, do you also have a spirit guides or like guidance system to help you in your non-physical life?
You have connections of others and you still are connected to source. So you have support. You always have support. You can't escape. You can't go to your own little separate island of universes and be alone. It's not possible. But only you in a third dimensional mindset would think that it's possible to escape being alone. So yes, you always are surrounded. And
okay. All right. And we were talking about soul families, soulmates, and twin flames. How would you explain those concepts for us that humans have labeled?
Yes, your labels, your addictions, your strong addictions to labels to be able to understand things. And it is unfortunate because humans mislabel things all the time and they wonder why they get confused. And then it is a weird game of Chinese whispers between the spiritual communities, mislabeling the labels and then misdescribing the labels. And then it just turns into a very jumbled up piece puzzle that confuses you more than empowers you. So from our perspective, you're all part of source and you all choose to have different lifetimes and different life contracts, and you choose to have the roles of certain, we would say soulmates want to remember source from each other, with each other. And so it is a complementary empowerment to remind themselves of the connection of being whole. And so often with soulmates, we want to say the yin and yang symbols. When you have the white component and the black component, but it mixes together in complete balance and harmony, there is no right or wrong. And it's definitely not good versus evil, but it is about unity and duality and perfect balance. And so when you have that perfect balance working, you get to have quite a close connection, as if it was the perfect divine, universal, unconditional love of sorts, when you have that dynamic in balance and harmony. And so this is why you're so connected strongly to your soulmates, because they are the missing piece to your whole. We hope that was correctly translated. The vehicle thinks it's incredibly funny, and we think she's gone into dirty humor.
So soulmates are from the same soul?
You're all from the same soul because you're all really source. So
right.
We're saying that this is, you have designed a perfectly complementary part of you and another person, and you've both agreed to do it, and you both have agreed to become complementary soul fragments of each other. So it is this beautiful unity. It's complementary, it's balance, it's harmony, the duality of it. It is so balanced. And we say you can have different soulmates in different parts of your lives if you need it, but anything that gives you unity and balance is what we would consider as to be a soulmate, because it's a contractual experience to help you find your neutrality. because we understand it's very hard for you to have your own balance, because there's this disconnect, and not that many people can find the true pure balance and harmony of love within themselves. So you have a little mate, you have a little buddy, you have a little backup dancer who you are their backup dancer. And so you have that unity together. And you like doing this because you potentially have had other lifetimes together, and you both have things that you want to learn from each other, and you provide that for each other. So there is that beautiful puzzle together as you're experiencing the third dimension. You're not complete opposites, because that would be obnoxiously hard to feel that bond, but there is enough similarities to be able to have that profound, deep connection within. But then there's new little twists to their personalities that need to be matched, and you get to learn tolerance and acceptance and understanding and compassion from someone who's not exactly like you. You're not looking for a carbon copy version of you. You're looking for someone that matches your frequency and vibration, that's had the same life contracts to be of service for each other. It gives you the opportunity for these little growths and acceptances and understanding. So you're still learning from each other. We're not saying that you don't get triggered to learn from each other and accept each other when you're soulmates. Quite the opposite. With the twin flame situation, we're saying it's not a romantic connection. It could be siblings, it could be co-workers, where you resonate with each other deeply because you've got that life contract, but you need to push and trigger each other into sharper growth. And so it is, sometimes it can be smaller windows of opportunity for you to have these twin flames in your life to spark you, burn you, encourage you, and motivate you to grow. Then, as we know, growth can be painful when it's at an accelerated rate. So labels, labels, labels. Can you just accept that we say every connection you have with people is to give you the opportunity for growth and experiences that you can provide for each other, learn from each other, and expand your consciousness and your experiences and your wisdom and growth to be able to understand the third dimensional complexities further. And whatever labels you need to state on those relationships, so be it. But understand the purpose and the significance would be something you should be able to see at this point.
Okay, so do the twin flames have the same higher self?
Not necessarily. It can be fractions. It can be from the same collective.
Okay. So if it's from a fraction, then they do have the same higher self?
Yes. So if you all have the same higher self, you're a fraction of that higher self's experience. So, and we say there is many higher selves that are in collectives of the same starseed families that are like cousins, shall we say, for a better word. And so your soul families could be cousins because you all have the same you have either the same higher self, or you have the higher self has higher relationships with other higher selves. And so you become a collection of collectives that's still connected to certain, say the Arcturians and the Palladians and the Andromedans, and there's a whole million different, we actually have over exaggerated, but the number there, but it is insignificant, but it's a lot. And so the higher selves can reside at all different levels of dimensions, because that is when they originally split away from source. So they're still observing their life splitted away from source. So the higher selves are the original detachment from source, experiencing that consciousness Potentially, it could be physical, depending on the dimension that they are residing in. And then they have split off from that perspective down to have other experiences, to be observing of all. And the split goes down and down and down and out and out and out. And so it is all observing everything at the same time. But when you all return back to source, all of that information is merged.
Oh, I see. A lot of people confuse twin flames with only personal relationships, like romantic relationships. So can they have romantic relationships with twin flames?
It is entirely possible to have that, and those lessons would be important and part of life contracts. So it's not always going to be, the twin flame could be just a fiery relationship physically, but it's not going to be a soulmate. The soulmate is more completion, whereas a twin flame is to burn and inspire you. It's more fiery, and it's not for, it's a shorter, we would say it would be a shorter experience than, say, of a lifelong soulmate companion.
Oh, I see. And do the soulmates also have the same higher self, or could they have the same higher self?
They can have quite different ones, or they can have the same. It's choices.
Oh, I see. And what about soul family? How would you explain that?
Broken down of the same higher self. And we're saying that you could be directly connected to the higher self, or you could have the cousins of other higher selves and their fractions of selves. So, and we would sort of classify soul family as being from the same collectives. So the higher selves that are connected to, say, the Arcturians, they've got their group and their clique, shall we say, and they want to learn from each other and grow from each other. And their lessons are specifically for them at their higher dimensional experiences and all of the lower fractions of self.
Okay, so for me to understand this more, so where is my higher self residing?
What higher self, and where is it residing?
Yes, I mean, they're residing, so are all of our higher selves residing at the same level, or they can go to different levels?
As we said, higher selves can reside at different dimensions as they have removed themselves from source to experience it for the first time. So
right.
Those people who have shifted, removed themselves from source to experience their first lifetime here on earth, their higher selves are in the third dimension. That is it. That is them. That is their fragment of source. They have no other experiences, physically or non-physically, apart from being source. So they are in the third dimension, being fractions of their higher selves, because that is it. They have no other references, no other experiences. They may have imprints, but not their own. So you can't imprint to have a higher dimensional experience.
Oh, I see.
What is the point of having an imprint of a fifth dimensional life when you are of the first experience mastering and trying to experience the third? It is mismatched. Doesn't make sense. It would not empower you to understand.
So for those type of beings, they wouldn't have a soul family then, because they're so new.
You're all part of the soul family. You're all connected to source. You're all connected to source. You all are one. So they would have the small fraction of source that's within you resonates with their small fraction of source that's with them. You may be distant cousins if you have to label it, but you're all connected. But their higher selves are in the third dimension.
Right. So
they are their higher self. That's it. There's nothing else apart from source. But we don't want to label higher selves as being source, because that is something else for your terminology that you are insisting we use with you.
yes. So in Joanne's case, where is her higher self?
This is not a conversation for Joanne's information to be discussed. This is a public conversation.
Oh, yes, sorry. Okay, I think I get it. So going back to the dragons on Earth, were they mistreated by humans?
There was different, shall we say, when humans were starting to evolve, they were, you could say, cavemen like beings, and so they were eating and capturing the dinosaurs that did exist with them when they cohabitated. The dragons and the dinosaurs were leaving at around the same sort of time when that catastrophe, we want to say,
yeah, yeah,
we want to say cataclysm, and then another word at the same time. So pardon us for pushing out that, because from both perspectives of the conversations we are wanting to talk to you about, there is different perspectives. So a cataclysm and a catastrophe merged in at the same time to be able to wipe out what you would consider the main dinosaur collectives, because bacteria came in, a lot of different things came into the planet at that time. The dragons that did stay isolated as such to live out their experiences here did have more contacts to humans eventually. They were ants to the dragons, shall we say, to just make sure you understand the power of humans versus the power of dragons. And so for you to be concerned that there was harm, yes, there has been some harm, but it is the contract between the human and the dragon that was always playing out. But as humans became more toxic with their density, shall we say, for lack of better labels and terms, the dragons had already mastered their experiences here and did not want to be exposed to the density, because it was not enjoyable for them to have that. So there was, and there was dragons that were removed from main societies, but as societies grew, the dragons did have to cohabitate with the growth of humanity. And so there was hibernation for the dragons, as they did not appreciate the winter months. And this is when the exploring of the humans would discover the dragons. So there was some exit points from man, but this was fine. This was approvable, and we are saying this from the perspective of many life contracts that needed to experience that.
Oh, I see. And can you give us like a time frame when the dragons decided to leave, like the last dragon?
I want to sort of say around, sort of like, it depends on the timeline that you're looking at, but around the 10th century. Ish.
Okay. Oh, all right. And is there a location on Earth where they were last where?
Well, they were spaced around. Most of they did have accessibility to all land, and they did have their own locations that they grew up in and had their own families with and experiences. But as those experiences and life contracts played out as they needed to, the population of the dragons dwindled because the food sources, and there was a whole lot of other, they had evolved from this third dimensional experience. So they were leaving naturally as they were finishing and completing their experiences that they wanted to have with each other. There was, we're just trying to show, there's a few different timelines where some dragons lived longer, but we're saying not much longer. So a few sort of 100 years beyond that. But it just depends on what lessons you needed to experience. So it is hard for us to say the exact date and time when the last dragon left the physical planet. But there is still DNA here on this planet, so then it becomes impossible for us to say when they have left, because they are still physically here with their DNA and their bones and their imprints of energy that they have still left here. Plus, on top of all that physical, you have then their etheric bodies that are still very much present here. And so they are still felt energetically. So for us to answer your question of when did they leave, they've never left. They're still here and they are still supporting humanity.
Right. Yeah, I was referring to the physical body.
Yeah, and we've just explained to you that the physical bodies are still here because they have been entombed by stone and a whole lot of other elements. So you're really asking us when was the last breath that a dragon took, and we're saying there's too many timelines to be able to give you an accurate, pinpointed one event.
Yes, and I appreciate the estimate, so that's fine. And is there a reason why, like in Wales, there's a lot of like dragons, presence of dragons, like in statues or the flag? Is there a significant relationship to dragons there?
Well, dragons did help protect beings, humans, and so they were respected and they were honored as protectors. Those humans didn't try to enslave and own the dragon, and they were very grateful for the relationships that they had. So they honored the dragon. And then you have those who were being, dragons are territorial. And so when the dragon knew that there was a coming, an uprising of humans in their territory, they had ownership of the humans. And so when there were other battles of other dragons that were having turf wars, shall we say, as they were, it was like the immature dragons that were still trying to own their land. And so there was some battles with dragons on dragons as they were having some family discussions, shall we say, with growth. And some humans did get stuck in those battles. And so when a dragon was territory of their land and the ownership of their humans, they would protect the humans. And so the humans would be so grateful that they would honor their protection and thinking, not actually realizing they were owned by the dragons. Because the dragons did have empathy and did see that there was not just other dragons that were trying to come in, but also other humans. And so the dragons became loyal to what they felt was their responsibilities.
Oh, I see. And why was the reason the dragons left? Because there were too many humans, or they just learned whatever they needed to learn?
The density of the planet was becoming distasteful to them. They had learnt lots of things, and also the uprising of many of the humans, because they could see that the humans weren't becoming more enlightened, they're becoming more dense. And their time, they realized that they could do more help on another dimension than subjecting themselves to the density, because they were knowing that even their own mindsets were being compromised because of the density and the lack of love, the lack of respect and honor that humans were showing to each other. It was not something the dragons wanted to be a part of physically.
Oh, I see. So they just stopped reproducing themselves.
They decided that their lessons were being completed and that they wanted to not be experiencing the density, because they could see that it was going to get much worse, not better.
Okay, so they just, like we say in human terms, they just decided to die?
Mm-hmm. They had exit points, they died, and they became their etheric bodies, versions of them. So some of them have not even returned to source because they lived for so long. They are having their experiences still, what we would say in a higher dimension, still on this planet, which is still part of their life contracts to experience it. So they are the guardians, we say, of this planet also. So they are the ones that don't have much voices for this planet, but they have been the supporters for a long time.
Oh, I see. And we would like to give them a voice. Do they have a message?
They have been talking throughout, but just representing and confirming the information that you have been receiving today as well. And so they are saying that they have been here listening as well, and they do feel like they have voices now when there is communication like this out there. They also feel like they are heard by many and have profound connections to many, so they feel like their voices and wisdom is being shared. They don't have the bigger platforms, nor do they seek it, because they don't need that. They know that everyone is aware of dragons, and regardless of whether you believe in them or not, it doesn't matter to them. They know who they are. They have self-empowerment and self-love, and they are comfortable with who they are and what they are and why they are.
Oh, I see. And how long did they live in 3D here? Like their bodies, for how long could they live for?
Easily thousands. It depends on their life contract. And they are different from what you have in your physical bodies. They are magnificent physical beings who have high vibrational energy to feed their empowerment, so they can live as long as they need to and want to.
Oh, I see. And what did they look like? Like how tall or what colors?
Again, life contracts and their choices of what they want.
Okay, so it could be a small dragon or a big giant dragon.
Absolutely. Why would they be limited to size and looks and colors and shapes?
Oh, I see. And they all had wings, correct?
Most of them did. Some of them did not need to and want to fly. That is not it was not a instant thing. Not a mandatory thing that they needed to fly. So often they did have the opportunity to, but they didn't use them. They didn't need to use them. And so eventually they were not able to fly because that was not part of their desires or needs. Again, choices, life experiences, they got everything that they needed.
Oh, I see. And how did they reproduce?
the same as what other mammals would be reproducing with.
Because usually I think they've been portrayed to just have eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how they reproduce?
Yes, because they are a part of the species. You have them in smaller versions with, we would say, like tuataras and lizards and other types of those cold-blooded reptiles. They are part of that physical experience where you do produce the eggs. And so they have that reproduction system. So that is consistent for their experiences because they are cold-blooded beings.
Oh, I see. And how did they communicate with humans?
Not so well in terms of conversations, but there were some mindful humans that would be able to sense the demeanor and the communication. The talking dragon statement is more telepathic communication than a physical dragon that could talk and speak English or other languages that the humans were able to understand.
Right. And how do dragons communicate with each other? Telepathically? Or?
Telepathically, and they also with body gestures and languages, they can read the body language and the mindsets of each other. But they're not big on chit chat. They don't need to talk and talk and talk. They are much more wiser than that, and they have little to say, but their wisdom and observation and knowledge is very vast.
Oh, I see. And the dragons had like soulmates, romantic relationships?
Yes.
And would they just have one and they will have like thousands of years as soulmates, or would they have different soulmates in one lifetime?
They have exactly what they want and need in each lifetime, just like you do. And so they could have single mates or they could have several. It is exactly what they had written in their life contracts to experience.
Oh, I see. And is there anything else you would like us to know about dragons here on Earth? Any other information?
We think that we have covered it quite well in terms of what is the most appropriate that you need. The dragons are here to still support energetically. They are of great service to humanity and this planet at this time. They have their higher vibrational frequency, which is also very supportive, and they are energetically still able to impact the planet. So they are very well received by the collectives that you normally hear from because they are of great service. And we understand that for some it is hard to understand aliens in your definition and different extraterrestrial species, let alone dragons that you can't see protecting and supporting this planet. And so there is much more than that as well. So it is, again, us trying to communicate with 3D humans who still think that they are the master of the universes, and that is okay. You can keep thinking that if you need to feel empowered and to have a higher vibration, whatever you can cope with to keep your vibration high, we say keep doing that. We understand that not many are able to or willing to comprehend bigger things than themselves. And that is okay. You don't need to be fully awoken to the full truth while you're still in the 3D. And so we just want to reassure you that if this is too hard basket for you to understand or accept, that is okay. You are entitled to be able to just deal and cope and accept with what you can deal and cope and accept with. We are not judging you. We understand there is a lot of very pressing 3D matters that you are focusing on and worrying yourself silly over. And so we want to just remind you that you are very much protected, more than you ever have known and more than you can ever see. And so if this gives reassurance to anyone, we are very happy to be of service, to be able to help with that, even though we understand that this sounds challenging for those who are still not accepting the bigger perspective. Or
yes, thank you. And I would like to thank the dragons for all the help that they have given us and keep giving us, and also send them love.
Much appreciated. They are grateful for this opportunity to acknowledge that they do exist. But again, they're so comfortable with who they are, it doesn't faze them if people don't believe them or not. But they're saying to those people who are doubting, they will suddenly notice lots of icons, cartoons, logos, a whole bunch of things just to let them know we know what you're thinking about us, and that is okay. But we will expose ourselves to you just to give you a little bit more pondering and consideration that there is much more out there than you know. We're not trying to trigger you. We're trying to help you grow. And we say this with much love.
Thank you.